First one is hiring, onboarding, and managing remote sales teams, and really a remote workforce is what you guys have to manage as an entire business, but specifically hiring, onboarding, and managing remote sales teams. So there's a few different things that I'd like to cover. I think there's 5 total. First one is hiring profile and hiring execution. How do you search for the right person that is a great person to hire as a remote employee? What are some of the things you look for in making sure that they can do that? And then what's your execution process look like? Considering you're hiring people all over the world, you're not necessarily sourcing them in one city or one industry. You're looking for them all over the place. So what's the hiring profile and how do you execute on the hiring process? A little bit different.
Sure. Yeah. And, I think we are the single largest fully remote company in the world now. It's a little crazy, and there's definitely cracks at times and things. And just a little bit of context, it started where our CEO wanted to hire sort of the best engineering talent. So he started to hire folks in different places. And even when I started, he was like, hey, if you want us to open up a Boston sales office, you can. I did the whole tour of real estate in Boston and almost pulled the trigger, but then it just became part of our culture. And so I started to hire some people from all over, and you could kind of place people strategically in these maybe lower tier markets or whatever. And so it became really, really valuable for us. And it's a big asset. On the hiring, you've got to find people. Not everybody is ready for it, right? The last person you want is the person that's like, I found you on a remote job site, and you ask them what they like about Envision, and they say, oh, I want to work from home. Like, they're out. And you do need to find people that are proactive. Like, you need to find people who seek help, because sometimes it's hard and you can get lost and you can hide. And you've got to find those folks that are very proactive in their approach and sort of kind of, ask questions around that and move in the interview process. That's really important. But the biggest thing, one of the biggest lessons we've had learned here is onboarding. Onboarding is so critical, because it can be very intimidating your first day sitting there and not having anybody to talk to. And so we've evolved our onboarding process, pretty dramatically over the last couple of years to, we kind of map out everybody's first 90 days now. And, they need to know exactly who they're talking to, exactly what they should be focused on, exactly what the expectations are. And we can still improve there. But even from things like time management, like, I think there's still opportunities for us to improve there, especially for some of the younger folks that come in and, they're living with 4 of their buddies in San Francisco, or they're, off on their own somewhere and, wherever. And they get up in the morning like, how do I spend my day? And so we're getting a lot more prescriptive in terms of just even time management training, and what percentage of the time per week should they be focusing on these types of things? What percentage of the time should we focus on these things? Even
Smart.
Like learning and development. And so the onboarding process is something that is just so critically important for a remote team. And there's still opportunities to improve, but I think we're doing a pretty good job now.
Nice one. So you just talked about hiring profile and some of the things that you need to assess to make sure someone's ready for that. You talked about time management, and you also talked about onboarding. Can you give the audience an understanding of like how specifically prescriptive you're getting? When you say like your first 90 days, you're mapping it out without you don't need to give all kinds of detail, but just like how prescriptive are you getting with the time management piece, or like the first week, or like, is it hourly and what they should be doing each hour, or is a chronological cadence that they should be going through? Like, how does this work and how prescriptive you get? Because I would venture to say that you guys would have a best in class worldwide onboarding program. So talking about this a little bit would be, I think, helpful.
Sure. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty prescriptive and very detailed. And the way it works is we've got sort of a company-wide onboarding program. The first designer that I hired, he now developed and runs that whole program. That's all about, it's like the first day is just logistics and get everything set up from a technical standpoint. Being remote, we actually, we give everybody $500 when they start to set up their home office, right? And so we know it's not easy, right? If you need a monitor, you need a chair, whatever. We also, another small thing is we give everybody a card that has $100 per month for coffee shops. It works in any coffee shop. And so we know people are going to need to get out of the house and have some social interaction, and they're going to work at Starbucks or whatever. Early days, we used to have unlimited Starbucks cards. When I started, everybody had an unlimited Starbucks card, and it was awesome. But you can imagine Starbucks sell a lot of food. Things got a little crazy early on. So we had to ratchet that down pretty quickly. And so now we've got We've got limits on them. Enabling people with like all of those things out of the gate. And then after you kind of move through the company-wide onboarding, then it goes into the role specific. And there's sort of different tracks around day in the life as a salesperson, what you need to know. And then it's sort of product is really heavy for us as well up front. How do you learn the product? And then content is really big for us. We have so much content, best practices, all of that. And so it's like along those tracks that we really invest, like, here's what you should be learning this day. Here's who you should be meeting with on this topic, and like going through that. We also do a buddy system for the role. And so, you buddy up with somebody, they kind of check in with you at the end of every day. And then you have check-ins with the head of onboarding as well, that does check-ins with the class to make sure everybody's on track. And it's been pretty good. I mean, you basically detail out everything that you feel like somebody needs to know to be successful with their job, and then determine sort of in order what they should be focused on, how deep they need to go, who the resources are that they should be reaching out to for it, and what the content is, and just basically giving that as a resource.
That's awesome. It's an ultra type A exercise, documenting all of that. And most of the time that gets lost as people leave the organizations as well. That'll obviously never be lost for you. It's a retention exercise for content, as well as headspace. And you won't have brain drain as much as well. So let's talk about one more thing within that, which is communication and how that plays into culture. So how do you sustain a culture, and what is it that you guys do for communications to proliferate that culture and keep it?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I've talked in the past, like, sort of communication and collaboration can be addressed through technology in a lot of ways, right? In the remote environment, like everybody, we're on Zoom, which we use, Slack we live in, and those are our, InVision we use, obviously. And so those are kind of our primary communication vehicles, obviously with email, and collaboration and tools. Those are really important. But it's interesting. Like, we've almost got to the point where Slack kind of not breaks, but at our scale, you got to figure out when something should be an email where it's a little bit maybe more trackable versus when it should go in Slack. And so we're sort of revisiting that. But you really, in the remote environment, you got to double down on the culture, and you've just got to really overinvest there. And we do a lot of things. One of the biggest things I would say is, really in any company, I feel like instituting values is really important. And so how do you institute some core values that you want people to operate within? And that's how you should be hiring people based on those values, managing people based on those values, put them in their performance plans, put them in their comp plan, all of that. And so what we do is, like, we celebrate those values a lot. Like, every meeting we have a value award winner and we celebrate the value. Or there's just little things like we have there's a tool out there called Bonusly, which is really interesting. And basically it's like a kind of micro rewards where we integrate into Slack with a Slack channel, and everybody at the company gets $30 or $50 per month that you have to spend. And so what happens is, I'll say, hey, Brandon, this is a great podcast. Boom, I'll shoot you $5. And everybody sees it. And then you could throw on there $2, or, hey, you crushed that prospecting meeting. Here's $3. And you can attribute it to a value or a hashtag of value. And it adds up, and people see it. And so because we're remote, you don't get a lot of those pats on the back or shaking hands walking out of a meeting. So it's a really powerful and engaging way to just give those little quick hits of recognition that are, again, visible to everybody. And people make real money off it. Like, people are buying, bikes and Xboxes and stuff because the money adds up, and then you can exchange it into a marketplace for things. So, like, those types of things are just really important in terms of, like, celebrating. Because you have to learn to celebrate. Like, I think one of the things as a fully remote company you do need to understand is, like, you kind of have to learn how to do everything remote. You can't say, all right, we're going to be remote, but we're going to get together every month and train in person, and we'll do our celebrations. Like, you got to learn how to train remote. You got to celebrate remote. You got to hire remote. Like, everything, you got to build that playbook. And it's not always easy. And there's still opportunities to get together, and we do that. But for us, we get together more. We do one annual thing that we've now done 2 years, which is great. Everybody's so enormously positive when you haven't seen somebody in person. Like, it's such a love fest. It's great. But we overemphasize getting in front of our customers and our community, and tying those, like, we kind of overinvest in sending people to community events or customer events. And so you get to meet and talk to folks on the team, and but you do that and kind of tie it to customer interactions as well.
Wow, that's really cool, man. That example, Bonusly, and putting that into Slack or your comm channels to get virtual pats on the back. Plus, you got the reward and you got the recognition, and it's peer driven, and you have $30 to $50, and you have to spend it. I mean, that's both prescriptively tactical. Thank you for that. And then also a great example of how to do both in-person companies as well as fully remote companies or somewhere in between. Like anyone can do that. Any organization can do that.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Ron, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it's funny. We do have a Slack channel as a fully remote company that's all house swapping. So people go in there and literally will just say, hey, I got a place in Toronto. I'm heading out for a town for a month. Anybody want my place? And somebody else will say, yeah, I got a place in London. Who wants my flat for a week? And people trade houses, or people go and, we had a group of folks on my team that rented a house in south of France for like a month, and like 4 or 5 people went and worked together. And it was funny because I was like, oh, here we go. Like, these guys are going to be whatever. And so I actually measured their productivity before and during their time in this house in south of France. Their productivity was actually higher because I think people understand that they have to earn the right for this remote benefit, and people take it very seriously. And so, I think we have that culture where we know, like, maybe this isn't for everybody, but for me personally, it's really rewarding to spend time with my family or travel or whatever. And like, you got to make sure that you're held accountable and you're available and you're earning the right every day to have that type of a benefit. And I think that's pretty pervasive in the Navision culture.